Council here in Talkeetna, and the purpose of this meeting is to talk about the recent flooding and high water events that we've had this past. A conversation with Borough Manager Mike last week, and decided it was probably beneficial to get everybody in one room or on Zoom that had information that they could share with our community about what's going on. High water, flooding, erosion, that's nothing new to Talkeetna. It's been going on for some time. But most of the efforts have been focused at the end of Main Street, and the borough's been dumping money at it, dumping rocks in the water, and doing some band-aids, if you will. We all know it's going to take a lot more than that, but the urgency ratcheted up a fair bit with this recent high water event, where now we're getting pretty close to some critical infrastructure with the state-owned DOT Spur Road and also the Alaska Railroad, to say nothing of, we've got several homes and businesses that are at imminent risk right now as well. So it's a serious situation. It's
pretty soon. Where is it?
Is it here, Jen?
Okay.
If you could please mute.
If you're on Zoom, please mute. The whole world can hear you. So at any rate, things are happening quickly. People are losing homes and having to move their homes, abandon their homes. And if it gets to the highway, I mean, that's going to impact all of us. So we wanted to have a meeting and just talk about it. And it's obviously gone beyond anything that we can do at the local level, or even at the borough level. This is a much bigger project now. And so the borough has declared an emergency. The state has followed up with an emergency. I'll let those folks talk to that a little bit. But at any rate, we're hoping that we can have some updates from borough folks here in just a minute. And then we've got a couple of state folks on Zoom that I'm hoping that they can chime in over the Zoom and give you an update on what's going on from their end. And our local fire chief, Eric Chappell, is going to speak a bit. And at the end, we're going to open up the Q&A. So hopefully if you have questions, I'd like you to hold them until the end of the meeting, and we can address them at the end, because hopefully your question gets answered during the meeting. So without further ado, I want to turn it over to Casey Cook. He is the Emergency Services Manager for the borough. Casey, welcome. Thank you for coming.
Thanks. Do I have to use the microphone?
I don't think so.
No, you need to use it for Zoom. For Zoom. Stream, please.
Okay, can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Stand like this. All right, so I'm Casey Cook. I'm the emergency manager for the borough. The last time I was up here talking about flooding in Talkeetna was about 14 years ago, during the 2012 one. So the dynamic has changed a little bit. I see a lot of folks I know and recognize, but for those of you who don't know me, again, Casey, so I come to Talkeetna all the time, right? I'm on the river. I have property up the Talkeetna River, which is also being eroded, right? So I can understand the frustration and the concern and the questions that you might have. So tonight's going to be kind of informal. So once I kind of give my spiel, I'm going to open it up and we're just going to have a conversation about your questions. And if we can answer them, we'll answer them. If we can't, we will find answers and get them back to you. So sound okay for the group? You can nod your head and say yes, it's okay.
Sounds good.
Okay, so thanks, John, for putting this together. We're always glad to come up and talk to the community and talk about this stuff. In my role as an emergency manager, when something like this happens, my job is to be the coordinator between borough department and community, state departments, and then FEMA. So that's what I do, in my day-to-day job when I'm not up there walking around downtown. So I'm going to introduce my boss, so it's Ken Barkley in the corner there. Tom Adams, Director of Public Works at the borough. Mike Camford, Mike works as an engineer on a lot of these projects. Tony Boothby, she's standing up right now.
I am.
She's our floodplain manager. Eric Chappell, Chief Chappell for the fire department up here, so you guys know him. And then borough manager Mike Brown, right there. Anybody else I'm missing from the borough side?
Assembly member Ron
Oh.
Bernier.
Assembly member Bernier is in the back there, and then Stephen Hinman is our public information, so all the nice things you guys read and on Facebook and social media, those types of stuff, that's it. Who? Todd Smolden back in the back from the governor's office. Okay. Anybody else? Okay, so I was gonna walk over there and point, but the way that I look at this current situation is we're really dealing with three different situations, as well as the disaster or emergency declaration that the borough declared. So we've got the end of Main Street, right, the Revetman Dyke intersection there, so that's one. We have the Talkeetna Airmen's Association runway right there in downtown, right, so that's another project, and they're all spread apart by a little bit of distance, right? And then we have the current erosion that's going on down by the railroad tracks and the IAC and alley, bed and breakfast and those types of places, so everybody tracking that? Am I right, am I missing any that I know about? Yep.
The boat launch.
Boat launch, right? So that's, yeah. I don't get the boat launch done last year.
Sorry.
So that adds to the complexity of what's going on, right? The way that Talkeetna is geographically situated, and what's going on, because I'm the road in one place one time, and else, or might be someplace else, not in the same place it has been. Over the course of the last 3 years, we had two separate repairs out at Main Street on Mike's Campbell's been kind of running that gig. So it's a reoccurring problem, right? And we spent a lot of money to do that underneath the flood service area, during the disaster declarations. And last August, it happened again there at Main Street at the end of the runway. So we're working with the Airmen's Association to do repairs and do some mitigation as well. Because again, because they're separate, because there's not one main structure that's protecting all of that part of the river, that's what helps to make it a little bit easier. So, with all that being said, any questions? So, yes, sir.
Yeah, how much money have you spent on that being a Main Street?
I would say $2 million ish.
Thank you.
Past 5 years of performance.
$1 million.
Thank you.
So, yes,
On the north side of the river. Either side to that. Yeah, both of the railroad tracks and the part of the Texas.
yeah, you're right. So, government, right? So, inside the flood service area, that's what gives us the ability to do some of the things here that we're talking about doing. If you're outside of the flood service area and it's impacting, like, and that's specifically on the road, impacting the road outside of the flood service area, it's just DOT, right? So some of these things that we might talk about, and have questions about, add to the complexity of trying to coordinate what we're doing. So over the course of the last few months, and Mr. Brown painted out the kind of information sheet about the money, the kind of plan of what we're looking at, right? So we're looking at doing buyouts. That was already in process up by the railroad trail. We're working on the Fixed Airmen's Association from last August. Totally different project, totally a lot of money, and then work that they did at Summerton Main Street. Again, totally different pot of money, totally different interaction. So the money gets confused. So I'm trying to do this. Right now, we're working on a match grant. Kowski's office. Sorry. For $2 million. Local match that we have to meet. So I'm using this project. I'm not going to use the dollar per second. So we have to basically come up with $600,000. Okay.
Yes.
From the flood service area. In theory. Flood service area, for those of you guys that pay into that, you might know that you guys don't have that much in your pockets to be able to do that. So we've been looking at other alternatives. We tried to go through the state declaration process. I was told that wasn't going to work yesterday or the day before because their hazard mitigation program for state disasters is no longer being, and it hasn't in the last couple of disasters. So we're also looking at some grants that the borough has gotten through NRCS and PDBG.
I
Looking at ways to utilize this money to come in and solve some problems, or at least mitigate them from being worse. But again, it's complicated on how that works. So, what do you guys want me? Let me rephrase it so it doesn't sound like I'm what information are you guys looking for tonight? So, let's open it up for questions, comments, so that we can have a conversation there.
I have but it's just the immediate question right now. And so this spot right here, where the buyouts are noted, we all know whose lots those are. How soon is that gonna happen? And then what are you gonna, is happen right here like yesterday?
Right.
So that's what I can find out. What's happening yesterday, right here?
So, I don't know if I've ever worked with, the federal government. But that process is usually very slow. So, I've been working on building clouds for multiple years, half a decade or more to get to where we're at now, to be able to do this. And then unfortunately, during that process, it starts eroding again. And so it's going to be hard to get that money moved to where it needs to be to really do a lot for those particular homes. And it's just because that's how our system is set up. So I don't have a good answer for the one that's going to make you feel good about it.
I'm just wondering about how soon are we gonna, is it gonna get to it? That's the
So,
question.
yeah, and I can't. So that's hopefully, you can be able to talk about some of that as a project, because they have a little bit grander ability, a larger ability to do some of these protection types of things. They were able to, build something to protect the road down there. So it's a little bit different. I think that they might be able to touch base on what they might be able to do to protect their infrastructure. And again, so it's borough infrastructure, it's private property infrastructure, it's DOT infrastructure, railroad infrastructure, and so they can't get the railroad.
Like that mess at the end of May in there last spring. We did that. The spring after the ice went on here, all around. So $4 million in the last 4 years, probably $2 million of it went down the river.
Yeah, so the way that the disaster recovery works, so when something bad happens and we go back in and rebuild, repair, you can only fix, repair the structure that was damaged. We can't make it bigger, we can't make it wider. We have to go back to pre-disaster conditions.
Why would you leave a hole?
For that way to work, that what you said. So if it wasn't there to begin with, then we have to go do more programs with FEMA, and this was not FEMA declared disaster with the state.
Figure out how to use the money. Instead of putting it here and there, a hole.
Yep, and I get that. I understand, I don't disagree with it. But if we hadn't done something, then there would have been 19 other people that would have been mad. Well, it's still there. So that's why we're here. So these Band-Aid fixes, they're not tenable long-term. So. Go
Is
ahead.
it possible to rechannel the river over to the traffic-free side where there's no residents? River? I mean, they did it on the Matanuska, there was 3 channels, they've been done, they can be done during, I mean, if we make it to the winter, they can be done when there's not sand in the stream, if that's of concern.
So the conversations that we have with DNR, right? Because DNR owns the rivers and channeling the rivers and doing the work in the rivers. And so once you do, you have to start looking at the environmental cost of doing that. Right? So if they're working in the rivers in the wintertime and outside of salmon spawning and those types of things. So I'm not saying no, I'm not saying yes. Because historically it's allowable, but they changed since probably the last time the rivers were dredged in that river. I have no idea what those regulations would be now in 3 different.
Who could we ask this question to?
That's a DNR.
Let me ask. So again, my name is Tom Adams, I'm the public works director. So, to the gentleman in the back, we feel your same frustration. We feel the same way that, when we come here to emergency basis, we're limited to what we can do, and we're doing it under the best conditions. Typically, we're forced to do this in high water because that's when the erosion is taking place, the scour is taking place. And I think that's the only way to transition here. But we're really looking for a long-term solution. And in order to get a long-term solution, we need help. The borough needs help from the federal government, the state government. We cannot do this on our own. We don't have the funds. The flood control service area cannot afford the repairs that need to be tapped on a long-term basis. The emergency declarations don't give us the funding allowed to do mitigation necessary. Fortunately, we have a federal congressionally directed spending grant that we're working with FEMA right now. Reference earlier, it's going to give us about $2.5 million. It's intended to study, and I know everybody's going to groan about that. But until we actually get the right people involved to figure out what the long-term plan is, because we don't have that solution right now, we can't actually implement it. So, like I said, we have basically 3 areas there, right? So the borough's infrastructure includes mostly the dam and revetment, and then the utility line that's down in that same area. And those are our focus points. We've been repairing the dam or the revetment for the past several years. I've been in this position for 4 years. 3 of those 4 years, we've gone out and done Band-Aid repairs. Believe me and my counterpart, Mike Mantle here, we're frustrated just throwing rocks in the river, knowing half of them are just tumbling down the river. That's not cost effective, but that's what we're stuck with doing to at least protect the community, the end of that area as best as possible, because we don't have the funds to go build what needs to be built. As far as the properties down there, we're kind of transitioning to protecting the spur highway, and that's, I'm gonna let DOT, are they online, John? I'm gonna let DOT answer that question, because I don't do that. I can tell you though that the borough was in the process. We started months ago pursuing a grant opportunity with NRCS, Resource Conservation, USDA, that would enable us to buy out the properties, and we've been evaluating. The problem is we were just getting that process started. It takes a match, and again, it takes over $500,000 match. We don't have that, so we're in the process of a couple different programs. One being the CDS. We got to find a match for. We got the NRTS. We got to find a match for. So all that means we got to find money, and we don't have it right now. So we're actively trying to pursue it either from the state or federal government, and we're just not there yet.
I just want to Talkeetna pulls in 85% of the tourism dollars in the borough and not take, where's that money to save Talkeetna?
I feel everybody in this room has spent $500 million.
Yeah.
Where does the
Let me just say, Talkeetna is fortunate in the fact that we have a service area that gives us the authority to actually spend money in a flood control situation. There are other communities, they're without getting into the powers that the borough actually has as a second class borough, we don't have the authority to spend area-wide funds. And this isn't area-wide funds either. These are service area funds. Casey mentioned earlier, on an annual basis, we only collect about $80,000 against the service area to go towards, to collect from the flood control service area. And on an annual basis, we're using those monies to do inspections, to do maintenance. And $80,000 doesn't go very far when you're talking about a couple $1 million needed to study, and then ultimately working somewhere on the order of $20 million in order to do some kind of instigate some sort of plan for a long-term benefit. You had a hand over here.
Just kind of tailing off the revenue. I work with federal governments all the time. Alaska never fits. And so often land managers, agencies, communities have to be proactive. And the revenue piece gets rid of that. I think 5 years ago, engineers came to town and they did some hydrology studies, floodwater modeling, cost benefit analysis that we're putting the community, can be worth it, right? And the cost benefit analysis, if you remember, it was really just a reduction in avoided losses. That's structural appraisal and contents inside that structure. And something is going to lose that battle every single time, right? But the borough, as you know, there's a lot more value to the even, that was not captured. Taxes, property taxes, state costs, they have an international deal. There's opportunities to capture the real value and third-party economic impacts or a partnership with the university could really channel that and allow some dissent in the cost analysis. Is that like, yeah, I got a couple of cottonwood trees, small cabins, yeah, and $200,000. That's not. My God, there's millions and millions of dollars of revenue coming to this town. And you guys take that off of us. Like I said, that's the fact. And so it's reactive. It can be as little as $80,000 to $200,000 to get that contract in place, get an assessment, and you can present that. We have proposals that, how funding cycles and politics grow up and down nowadays. You're ready for it. Have a challenge grows too. And if they haven't, maybe they haven't.
I can tell you the grant that we have, the CDS grant that we're working with, because it's a planning grant, we can't go to construction using the monies we have. Well, we'll get to that point, but at the back end of it, we'll know better what the plan is. Any kind of grant funding that implement that project will require a PCA, benefit cost analysis. And so that could be something that we do as part of the grant effort. Right, because any kind of funding, any kind of project that requires PCA, you're less than one. You're exactly.
Yeah, so like I would say, those folks that are in a hit the river, they have Talkeetna is not 1,000 people on that river; it's an economic generator.
But the fact is, those funds that are generated aren't available for this purpose.
No kidding. I'm saying.
I'm sorry. I'm saying when it comes to using area-wide money, service area money, you fix area-wide money for this purpose.
But you could keep it in perform that study with some administrative funding.
Perform that study using service area monies, absolutely.
Yeah, that's really good.
And then let me just back up. What's not being said is the effort that has been going on. Like I said, the Corps of Engineers, he was here several years ago and provided a study.
Right.
Since that time, they have limited authority themselves. And, that's part of the reason they might suggest that they're not able to react in the manner that we'd like to see them react. Part of that reason is federal legislation and the Water Resources Development Act actually allowed them to respond or federal monies to come and assist in coastal erosion. A couple of years ago, we worked with our CODELs, our congressional delegation, to actually add language to allow riverine erosion. So on federal level, the federal institutes change and now allows our CODEL to use work to provide funding for this type of project. So, there's a lot of activity going on.
Can you explain how the borough allocates that tax money? Because that's collected on a very local scale based on the economics of the region. So once we send our bed tax to the borough, what pot does that go into? How does the borough allocate?
Our photo friend, I don't know.
Huge amount of money. More than
We agree. I want to go back, so I want to back up for a second on revenues, because what they're telling you, everybody loves limited government, so they want the government to do something that, and the challenge is we have baseline area-wide authorities like schools, right? So that's why we're able to use area-wide revenue for that. And the reason I'm going down this path is our legal limitations to provide revenue to support flood control activities limited to the service area. And so that revenue has to be generated from the mill rate collected against that service area. So you can't use a bed tax, you can't use area-wide revenues to support this type of activity. And it really is just a legal limitation. Now, I guess in theory, that could change, but that would require voters to say, we want you to have very reliable control powers. I'll be honest with you, I don't ever see that happening, because I think people would realize what that potential expense would be. Because we have the similar problem along the Matanuska River, right? And they don't have an area, a flood control service area, and we walk right in there and we look at it, we see the problem, we know what we could do, but we don't have the legal standing to do anything about it. And so it is tough, it's frustrating. Like when they talk about the $80,000, that's what it raises. We could look at raising the mill rate, that would generate more. But the challenge is the scope of this project so far exceeds what the tax base could generate here with bed tax or whatever. What we're signaling, and I know the timing kind of took away from this, we did the disaster or the emergency declaration before there was actually an emergency. It just happened. We picked up a ton of rain that week, and we ended up in a flood/erosion issue at the same time. But that was actually a preemptive declaration to signal to the state to try to put an emphasis on this problem and say, listen, folks, this is far beyond what this service area can handle. This is far beyond what the I would argue it's beyond what we can do, even if we could leverage area-wide revenues. We need some state assistance. Followed suit with a disaster declaration. Makes some funding available for like the here and now, like if we need rocks in the river, DOT wants to go down here and armor the highway, which would probably have. But it doesn't solve the long-term problem. What Tom's been talking about is we want to get away from throwing rocks in the river. It's not a long-term solution. But we need federal help to do that. So the word of change is good for you, because literally the Corps would just go, sorry, don't do river reforestation on this. And so that's recently changed. We've got a couple of grants, and I want to point to the handout, because the reason we did the handout is complicated. I get it. I don't like it either. But this is a handle that has to fall within a program that exists in some way to bring money to this problem. I sit back and I look at what's happening in Juneau with the Mendenhall, for example, and I've seen how quickly the federal government got in and put in a barrier system in no time flat. And I'm looking at that and going, well, it's possible. It's a river. It's a similar situation. It's different. It's a glacier outburst, but the point is, it's not like a little bit what's being experienced here. I'm like, well, if you can move that quickly there, why can't we move more quickly here? And so that's why we were moving on the emergency declaration to signal a couple things. One, it's exceeds our capacity. That's what we said. And number two, it's imminent. I didn't know it was going to be the day after the declaration, to be perfectly honest. I thought we would have a little bit more time. But what we were really saying is we have these federal funding opportunities thanks to our congressional delegation. We want to make use of that to come up with a long-term solution so we can change the pattern. This annual recurrence, we did that. And we share your frustration with throwing rocks in the river and spending money. None of that money is with the control service. It's state disaster money. So I don't want you to think like we're taking flood control service money. Actually, the states. Still not a good idea. And so we want to change that up. We want to change the pattern. We want to come up with a long-term solution. But I can tell you, whatever long-term solution we come up with, or the Corps of Engineers, or anyone else, it's not going to be funded locally. We've got to have some outside help. And that's what we were trying to do, is bring some awareness, bring a sense of urgency to this, and understand the situation that we're in. This is going to continue to be a thing, probably every year. At least that's what happens. If we don't, that's what this is about. It's who we already do. There's been a lot of work to look for different opportunities to acquire some right away or property allowed to buy time. That's what buys the sun, it doesn't fix the problem. All of that's been going on now for a number of years. So I suspect this fall we'll be doing something. I think, and I hope DOT is online will be able to speak to this. I think they need to speak to what they think this all looks like for protecting the highway, because that's kind of an important piece that's new that hasn't happened for the past couple of years. And then our folks will look at the existing, Casey talked about this, the existing facility with the dike and rivet, and what we have, we already have some for the airstrip. NRCS for the buyouts, I'm gonna say this, and I know there's folks in the room that are at risk of losing properties soon when they're uninhabitable now. I don't see that money coming to bear in time. And I mean, I would love to see that happen. It just doesn't seem likely given the time that we have right now. We'll keep chasing it. I understand that. I totally understand that. That's why they come up and showing up in person tonight. We understand that. It's not law. We can only do what we can legally do. We can't just do what we want because we know it's a good idea. We have to have some legal standing and a way to pay. Right now, we don't really have, we do have some legal standing in the service area, but if it has $100,000 in it, that's only going to go so far, right? And now, fortunately, the state stepped in. There's probably about $1 million available right now, as I understand it, for the near term, but we want to not lose sight of the long. Because if we don't figure the long term out, we're just going to continue the same cycle. You have your answer. Sorry.
So I guess I have a little bit of a question. What is the intention of the buyout? Kind of, is it going to be to have access to do work there? Because it's only voluntary and every other property chose to sell and the other, then it's not going to do any good. And to that point is treating this as 3 separate areas. Every time you fortify something in the river, everybody knows that you can. It's like you put a rock here and it messes up your river. So like every little area we fortify puts up everything around. And then it makes that point stick out and get wiped out next time. So like treating this as 3 different, 4 different, 5 different seems like we're just throwing rocks at it again. So if we don't come at this at one time, then yeah, just keep dumping rocks from more driveways.
I'll answer. There's 2 questions. There are 2 issues. One is the problem. Like I said, we covered months ago trying to find an opportunity to relieve the issues we saw in 4 properties. Work with NRCS, figure out that risk properties and those. Given what happened in the intervening time, it's a lot of land. We lost some structures. We're imminently going to lose some structures. And like Mike said, even we're continuing to pursue the option. We've got to come up with a map, and it's subservient to the other map for $2 million CDS right now. Regardless, even if we were able to get that soon, it's not going to happen in a time frame that really provides relief to us. And now we have it for DOT. Their projects coming on board, and there's an overlap. Looking to acquire perhaps under this program, and project at DOT might be using a different. So now that they have a project planning right now, perhaps might do a project as well. It might be a need altogether for us to pursue the NRCS one. And then, with respect to your other question about patchwork project up and down that area, absolutely, we realize that. That's why we need a comprehensive review of the whole problem. To get it all at once and not just go at it in bits and pieces. And to do that, it all comes down to, that's what we got to figure out what to do.
I have a question for the chat. So there's a general question from Gunnar. Suppose that in some miracle world money wasn't an issue and that things did take a long time for planning and permitting. What's your general idea of the things that ought to be done to protect the various places that you
Well, we got, like I said, we have a couple of different hotspots. We got at the north end, we have the Main Street, Dike and River that we need to continue to preserve and enhance, honestly. But with the river water, the high water event, for highway board and the fire events, I would say that we could find hands that would agree that highway is probably the priority right now. And DOT's reviewing that project. So, and I'm gonna let them speak to how they. And I don't know when we jump into them, John, because it's kind of get a little.
We can try them now if you want, or if you.
Let's just keep going here, and then we'll get to you.
Okay, so we'll come back to that. I'll let DOT speak to exactly what their plan might be to armor the riverbank in order to protect our highway.
So,
You've been, you want me to do
so
those?
just, so I know you. I've got some other questions that kind of got passed over. So in the middle, anyone want to ask your question? I'll come back to you.
We talked about 4 areas, so the whole strategic plan of what to do with funding. How about just picking one area here? I've been looking at the river here for a couple of years, and everywhere that it makes its turn, right down here, it puts a tremendous amount of erosion. That's why we get up to river cabins there, we're just about out of it. These are goners, okay? You know, saw Doug's cabin going and things like that. If we were to take the spur road, and keep it straight and then cross up here somewhere, it's gone. At that point, then the railroad's going to be able to do the railroad and not worry about it. Okay. It's something that we can look at and see. We're talking about here, general, broad, here's the whole plan here. Trying to get a railroad across. We've got about 3 holes here. Come down there and cross it and do down. Now, the railroad likes a 90-degree crossing. You don't have one now. You make the same exception down here. You come across, sorry, skate parkers are gone. And then not really like the road is going on. It's okay, but all these areas will turn, like right here above the airstrip, those trees. As soon as you put them, sorry, these are wrong already, and we get this part corrected, and then the rest of it, okay. It's up here. If they hadn't put that dike in 7 or 8 years ago, whatever it was, that caused a back swirl here, yes. But the way the river is now, these 2 rivers combined together, if you look at the satellite photo, it's immense. The fact that dike is there, keeping this whole area from being moved out. So that was a good move. Well spent money for that move. And, trying to protect the legal thing along here. Let's work on one thing at a time and be thankful that we've got this in us here. Getting on stuff like that, accept that. Then the state, hey, you need to protect your road, the state road. State maintain, fix it. You spend a lot of money on the other roads, fix this one. And then at that point, then if you're worried about this, you go to the railroad. It's not a responsibility anymore.
Yeah, so. You know, some good ideas. Not bad ideas, I guess.
State funded, by the way.
So, remember, every one of those ideas and implementing those ideas comes to cost. How do we pay for that? Stuff?
No, the state pays for it.
Somebody.
State road. State road.
Yeah,
Maybe this area, but so the state, you go to your road, we're not going to pay.
Well, I think that's the point. We're going to get to them in a sec because they recognize that. They recognize it's a state road. Recognize, they're working on that already in some form, using federal dollars, perhaps, most likely. It's not. But you're correct. I mean, we recognize the same thing up and down. So that dike was put in 1979 under totally different water conditions. You know, most of you have been here long enough and known that in 2012-ish when that flood event came in, you know, the Sioux started coming off East Bank and hammering East Bank versus the West Bank. And, you know, with a braided river, that happens frequently. You know, it moves left and right, you know, continuously. Right now, we're getting hammered because all of that is on a straight line vector, basically. And so the revetment's in there, it's helping protect. We're getting beat up basically every year. As far as the rest of the riverbank, you know, we have a QR code here that you guys will find, I think, is very interesting because that's a lot of information about this issue. First of all, it's a storyboard. It's got a really cool slider that goes back and shows the loss of land up and down that area. Maybe, you know, if you've been here long enough, you know that the land used to go up several hundred feet beyond where it is right now at the end of Main Street. We've lost that much land. And in this past couple of years, though, you start looking right at the end of the village here, we'll start to see that land brought out now. To your point, that's becoming another area of concern. Notwithstanding the area, the big hole now that's down up above the between our Benton and our dike, that's my concern here. Because once that scour happens and gets behind, It's gonna be gone. Right, we're gonna lose that. And so, and now we got another area that showed up right down where the properties are, just north of the Spur Highway. It's starting to rot at a pretty good pace. You can just see up down there, we got hot spots that are eating our lunch, for lack of a better term.
Photograph. And it shows what it looks like here, years ago.
Go to that QR code. Yep,
You could walk out on it.
absolutely, absolutely.
And so, yes, that went away, but we really haven't. Really have been threatened because that dike is there. Yes, there may be a back swirl, I'm sorry, but that's not, okay, in that area yet. And the water used to be all the way up there. That same picture that shows that was a one area. And there was a dike of some sort built there at one time. It was the improvement to that dike out there. When you got rid of the rock out there, huge improvement on the whole far end of Talkeetna. And that's well. But we don't want to make it sound like everything we've done has worked. That worked tremendously well. If you look at what happened, one of the points that we had to put that in.
Right, yeah, and I appreciate that, Eric. Go ahead.
I don't.
Oh, yeah, I got it first. Go ahead.
I think we're slightly glossing over the importance of city at the end of Main Street. And I'd like to ask, why is that gap? Now you come down Kentucky and you've got your revetment, but between those two, there's a gap. And if you're water, and you're talking about the area, I think it's really important to consider this. But yet start at the top and work your way down. If that, at the end of Main Street, is not addressed, it affects diversity as much as it many people. It's a glaring mistake.
I can't answer you why that gap's there. I can tell you.
That has been left.
It relates back to the original construction of the Corps of Engineers, in 1979, with the dike, with basically the west. And then the revetment, I think, came in shortly thereafter. But you're right, the area of our concern is right where you're talking about. We've been out measuring depths out there. We have depths up to about 40 feet deep. And it just continues to scour all these high water.
A whole, very rivers, they move quickly. All it takes is a downgrade here, or whatever it is. But that hole, that energy has been accumulating, it is affecting everything downstream.
Absolutely.
I'm not saying it's specifically causing, but that distinctly affects everything. Everything else, yeah, focusing on the road, but you gotta fix that. It's possible water to get behind everything else. The airport.
You're speaking all the language. If we can find a pot of money in the world to put in that hole, that's exactly where we probably attack versus link.
Maybe you should consider something.
Piles.
But they used to have it right below the railroad bridge.
Whether we do rocks or do sheet piles, we don't have enough money at this moment to do that.
Well,
I understand what you're saying, but you see what our problem is. We'd love to do something. But, I can. I'm not making any progress on that.
What I wanted you guys to know that the high water is not, the watches it out, low water equally scours, the turf is hanging over the cuppings. I live at the last property down there. We've been trying to do self-mitigation, small brush house, whatever. What would you suggest as us living on the river or near it, what can we do proactively for each other and ourselves, like by hand, what can we do legally?
You mentioned legally. Because we've got spread around a few times too. So anytime you put a rock in a puddle, never put a rock in a river, you are now responsible for everything that happens downstream. Well,
I get it.
okay, so about what you're looking. The borough official to go and put balls in. then when it goes wrong down, it's my fault, right?
What it is it's getting behind the bank, like whatever this is happening, like the hole that talks about that we all know about. It's going down, we're hearing the trees go and it's rippling well, from the.
So what I would tell
Going
you
down the
is,
same.
what I would tell you is to reach out to the floodplain manager about stuff that you can do as a private property owner on your property to help alleviate that, right? Because it's gonna be different.
Back to funding strategy, just something to, have you engaged the last minute appropriations in the area? They have different possibilities, like hard sums, and also a lot of these federal funds are tagged on federal match purposes. And this is strategy that's being employed on different properties. We have this management system, and they have access to different funds. They're truly federal funds, but because of the sovereignty constitution, they qualify as non-federal match, we can talk millions. So,
If you want to bring me the name of the data corporation, I'm talking about for Talkeetna.
Yeah.
Right? So,
Gary owns a lot of land.
so if they own land, then you have those conversations.
Dyke in the River. Dyke was originally put in 1979. It was not a problem because there was a huge amount of land out in the Dyke. So that was not a mistake.
Nothing else to do. Thank you for that. Go ahead.
Speaking to the property versus new, we are behind the development for Susitna. And we want properties to sign Avenue, Greater River and Santa Cruz, and then the next turn came. So we partner with Fish Habitat for the project, the River Rehabilitation Project. We did the 200 feet, and it lasted 8 years really well. We had a couple of events where we go over the riverbank as well. But when it changed course, it couldn't stand it up to that 2 years ago. Rock failed. It wasn't like it was just mishmash. It was a cleanup that program, and it happened really well. So we just said, we'll give you guys a rock. That we couldn't go right up to the water because we would get fined and all the permits I got this reports and everything. So we just did 2 feet from the riverbank, dug a trench, and buried Gabian, 6 feet deep. We went down to bedrock. So we have 6 feet below on our land, 170 feet. And that held, okay, because the river can come to the rock, to the wall, but the wall can't go to the river. So it did break in and touch the wall. We had the rope and look at our property and see if we were co-compliant. We were fine. And then last year, the river went over the wall. It was only like about the same height over the river. It went over, and then we started having flooding of residue water coming through the salmon coming a few feet from the volume there. So this year we had to go 3 foot higher than last year, 3 foot higher on the avians. So now we have 3 foot above ground and 6 feet below. We have 9 feet, 170 feet. And this is probably about $27,000. So it's a good property first, but there is things that can be done that kind of funding, but we have not affected people south of us. Because it was, the vegetation actually slows down the river, it actually goes down lower. But that's something that property owners can't do on the river.
Thank you.
Only if we all get together and do it together somehow connected.
I had so much help in the community putting those Gabians in us. It just broke. It was just my heart. It became involuntary. Help me.
Yeah, so as we're talking about projects, remember the area of concern doesn't stop where the Redmond bank kind of doesn't even stop at the railroad bridge. Right? So it goes through 2012. So we're on top of where that money started. It was from Mercedes, right? And so I just want you to think that as we're talking about projects and when we start to do the community impact analysis, we can be part of that as well, right? We'll talk you know, the big wall downstream of Mercedes up there. And all that water comes in across the railroad tracks, floods the airport, floods the leach field right out there, the sugar field. So those are all things that happen in 2012. If you stop that water back into the Susitna, all of a sudden out here, literally in a hole. Just to remind, I just want to remind folks that it's much larger than just what we have on the map today. That ingress of Talkeetna also impacts the partially as well. But sir.
I guess it's frustrating to listen to this because there's a short-term immediate problem, which is that spur are only doing way out.
Yes.
But the big picture is frustrating because of the last development of it, how they're sitting in this company. It takes water to move water. I live in Talkeetna River City is going through billion slough and below. Not where it does now. After and volume is flowing out, I'm able to push it. I don't think we'd be in this. It does not flow right now. And my house is just normal. The Chalima is the big bad brother of this river system. They're not even engaging. And we have, and what's happening recently, this massive it's just moving down closer to us. And I think we all recognize here that at its point, the Alaska Railroad has created this eddy at the end of Main Street and funneled it into town. With the Alaska Railroad was here, it was like a long-term plan, we're responsible for this. That river should be flowing under a billion slough and below now. That's way out there, pie in the sky, but they're part of the problem. It is super frustrating that they're never here until they want to protect their little piece of.
Well, try to put it down.
But sir, the litter, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm Steve Mahay and my life 50+ years. And I'm really glad to see everybody here because this is an imminent problem. This is not going to go away. And it's going to be problems. And it's which back. I think it's only 10 years, 1915. You know, so a little over 100 years in time, that's nothing. You know, I've been personally through 3 100-year floods. I'm not 300 years old. we have some kind of problem with monitoring. You know, their guesstimations or whatever set us up, you know, for what we're trying to deal with. And talking about the railroad, the railroad really is the culprit of a lot of our problems. I've watched the hydraulics. I've actually been out with the scientists doing the surveys and the studies, and I'm checking them, trying to, well, what are you really doing here? You know, kind of deal. But I've been on 3 Susitna hydro project studies since the 80s. And I've been on hydraulic studies up at the Talkeetna River Bridge, all over the place, doing different studies around. And I had a hydrologist, or I don't know what they call the guy that does the study, and you got basins, and we're dealing with 3 basins. And we've missed the bullet so far. And that we haven't had all 3 of them get hit hard at the same time. The Susitna River takes about the water that goes up to Lake Louise and on up in there, under the and all that. It takes the rain shed for the basin is huge compared to the Talkeetna or the Chalima. So that can absorb a lot. It takes about 3 days. You get heavy, you look at the radar, you got heavy rains up there. It takes 3 days for that Susitna water to get down to town. Talkeetna River, the Susitna River is 13 miles long, whatever it is. It's a giant basin. It's 13th largest in North America. So the Talkeetna River is very small and very fast to react. And the hydrologist, or whatever they call the guy, that does this thing, he said, this is an obvious problem. It used to be there were more spans out there on the river for the bridge going across, and they redid it, put it to metal bridge, and wooden pile thing that they had out there, temporary. So they put it in, and they cut off a couple of those pillars that they had that went out. The bridge went a lot further over. Well, when that went away, you got a choke point. In the Talkeetna River, if we see that we're getting water up in the Talkeetnas up there, 24 hours later, depending on how the storm mitigated up there now, we got it down here. That's very fast reaction. And the choke point, the guy that was doing the study, he said, well, there's no way that this bridge passage water channel underneath there can accommodate the size of that basin. It's just not even close. So until the railroad does something with that, you're gonna, with the bridge, and makes it greater capacity to Detroit, Williams, so that's what the river would be right now. I mean, over 50 years watching it, that's where it would be running right now. So we need to be over here. You know, and because of the railroad has kind of messed up the natural process of how these rivers spray and move, and that railroad is, and they did it right here in the Talkeetna. Now, the other day, they had that storm, the Susitna River got up 40,000 CFS. That's a lot of water. That's like a lot of water. The Talkeetna River was 44,000 CFS. Well, you got all the force of that water from the Susitna coming down, then and munching right into this three-river area. And then you've got the Talkeetna, which normally flows in the summer this time, I'm going to say it's 10 to 16,000 CFS. So it over doubled in size. It just blew out there. It backs up water north of the tracks that way and floods East Talkeetna. Each time we get a heavy rain, you see it, and if it's in the Talkeetnas, if you get 4 or 5 inches, it's right on the border. In 1986, we got 13 inches. And the water was just barely making it underneath the beams on the bridge out here. And there were trees starting to hang up on the bridge. That bridge came so close to being out in 86 under. Well, until it's, I don't want to take time, but the time that you are spending here doing this, it is very, very important in the future of all of our lives and our families. Everything, being able to live here is dependent on trying to figure out how to do it. And there's all kinds of ways in the how to do it aspect. And that's your job. And I appreciate the fact that you're actually pursuing it before it's after the fact. Then where we're going to help you now, you take it off the map, put it up to Ski Hill. We're going to take the cost of this project that we're talking about to be able to control the rivers up there. You're talking a couple $1 billion like a spot. We're talking about 100 million, maybe more. It's not a little job. If you're going to make it permanent, you can make it permanent. Ability to do that. But it's going to cost a lot.
I agree with Steve. I think that the scale and the cost of this is going to be higher than what we're just talking.
Were you at the meeting in 2012 when I came up? What was the idea? You guys remember that? What I said? We can fix the problem. It's going to take money. We can turn it into the LA River. We can put concrete on 3 sides. And you know that all gas that happened in our region. I can hear tonight. So, but that's how it works, right? And so you don't do that because everybody that benefits from the river being there, the tourists, it changes the makeup of the town. You do that, so you have to keep that in mind. Look at these projects. You want people to still be able to walk down to Henry Street. You want people to still be able to get on the sea boats and take them up the river and go fishing. Right, so all of these things and that project that we're talking about with the CES money, the Kowski's money, that's what we're saying. We need to spend money right now on a business plan. So if that includes the railroad bridge, that's gonna be in the this would solve this problem, and it's gonna cost this much money, and then it gives us the opportunity to go say, here's what we want to do.
Money problems. I had a comment years back regarding some of the flood studies, and it goes right to Steve's point regarding choke point of the river, that if you even left the bridge as is, and you put in a large overflow channel back from the abutments and incorporate this, and this is what sort of comes into the show. Everybody's got to have an excuse to spend the right pot of money, but and going as well to your turn it into the river and change the character of the town. The reason you would do something like that is elevate it from the main channel is a normal water level. Then you have a pedestrian crossing that also serves as a potential flood area. So you would move the back, and you would develop that as a trail. You would develop it as an attraction, and it becomes a tourist bonus. So we can use the tourist, you know, we use the bed tax money to fund the construction.
I just wanted to add that down at a place at the end of town, the power lines are also about 40 to 50 feet from falling in. And it is aware, when they fall in, there's no time for anybody past trailers like you're done. So,
Okay, but, you know, that's part of my job is to make sure that those entities and utilities, you know, so.
we told months ago.
So the manager Ron, we're reaching out to the DOT and some of the ask that he's on himself, so that it's not just coming from, you know, the lowly emergency manager, it's coming from the head of our local government and the mayor's office to say, here's what I need, and we need to come out and be aware of, like, we need these things happen. So that's me.
When you were talking to Courtney, you were cautioning her to be careful on what she does to the river, because what happens below the river could be her responsibility. Would that be on the road, what they do with the bridge?
That's it.
And they're not here.
Sorry, who, somebody else in the back? Go ahead, okay. I see you guys.
Me?
Yeah.
After the 2012 flood, you worked with the council, we applied, I think, for the 205, is that the correct number? Yeah, and HDR came in and did a whole bunch of engineering studies, and they came up with, I don't know, half a dozen, some of the mitigation ideas, and of course, one of them was what Steve was talking about, extending Talkeetna trestle, dikes along, Mercedes and the road, and I'm just wondering, have you given up on that altogether, that grant, or is there any hope of that? I know the problem has been studied, at least most of the problems are in West, and it didn't fix the problem between the Duke and the Redmond. I just wonder where we're at.
Well, we haven't given up. That's a federal program. We followed up. We've been working with the Corps, trying to use like their CAP 14 program. It's competitive nationwide. And, we, up to recently, riverine erosion wasn't part of that program. So now we're in a position where perhaps we can use the rewording of WORDA, the Water Resource Development Act, and perhaps at least make this an eligible project. But then again, we're still competing against the rest of the nation, the Missouri River, the Mississippi River, and all those, those type of projects.
So you guys haven't given up on it?
No, I mean, I know it falls short on saying it up here, but behind the scenes, there's been a lot of activity trying to gain muster for this project because we know we can't do it all. So we're working with the Corps, we're working with DOT, we're working with our CODELs. We're trying to drum up some money that allows us to do something. Because the only thing that we can do right now is react to each of these emergencies. And whoever said it earlier, and we're just tossing rocks in the river every year. There's $1 million, there's $1 million pretty quick. We're spending a lot of money that's just watching downstream.
It's still there. Is that waiting in the back?
Yes.
John, you got something? I see you.
I used to work for the borough. And please don't take anything I'm about to say because the people here from the borough weren't employed by the borough for most of the time. I did the commander up here in 2006 and 2012. The thing about the railroad bridge, we identified that 2012 as a key issue. We talked about things like flats underneath the railroad bed and so forth, but I don't think the railroad was very sympathetic to that. There's a lot of things going on here. The railroad is an issue, it's important. The fact that what used to be the buffer between Talkeetna and the Susitna is 80% gone from what it was in 2006. We lost about 10, 15% of that buffer in 2006. What used to be over there. 2012, we lost another 50%. And we have been eroding every year since then. And these guys have to be extremely frustrated because that, no matter what they do with the railroad, it's going to be undercutting it and damaging it every year, and there's nothing they can do about it this time. That's got to be part of the problem. Is what flows directly at Talkeetna. Did 20 years ago. How do you address that? That's a long-term issue. I think the important thing is to get the planning done and then see if there's a way forward. Working in a classroom grows frustrating. You have very limited government powers. And they do the best they can, but they don't have. I was in state government in Illinois. I was in municipal government in Illinois. I had powers. These guys don't have. And I think they do the best job they can.
That's probably a good segue right there. I know DOT's on board. We can come back to questions, but the reason you're talking about some hydrology things, and I'm not going to throw Ryan on the spot, but we have the DOT regional hydrology take online. And if anybody that has a specialty in this is OPM, I think it's a good time for us to hear what DOT's plans are on highway specifically, and then we can come back.
We'll come back to questions, but let's bring the DOT on if this will work. Ryan, can you mute your mic and we'll see if the room can hear you? I want you guys advantage, you know.
Hello, this is Bro from Alaska DOT. I just got a message that Orion had to step away for a couple of minutes.
You're on the hotspot.
If you want.
Can you speak on his
DOT,
behalf?
can you hear me?
Yeah. Can you speak on his behalf, or do you want us to carry on and wait?
Can you please carry? Oh, there he is.
Hey guys, can you hear me?
Loud and clear.
All right, yeah, thank you. I stepped away for a break for a second, but I wanted to speak to what DOT's role is. I was able to hear too much. Not everything came through, so if there are any questions that come your way or comments, I may have asked for some clarification. My name is Ron Roy. I'm the regional hydraulics engineer for Alaska DOT. We have been coordinating this location, so a big there and their help along the way. This construction site was brought to my attention by borough staff. Quite a bit of bank work here, keeping us. We have been since that time, and last fall, we pushed to start a federal project. Requires a level of coordination with our planning staff, and to develop that project into our state transportation improvement programs, federal funding. Our authorities are through that federal funding source, protection and management of our transportation infrastructure. So when we start looking at the site here, we have limited right of way. We have feet of right of way in this location. There are utilities on the riverine side of the roadway. So we quickly recognized that in order to build a longer term erosion protection project, we were going to require utility relocations or right-of-way acquisitions. And those following federal processes took a while. So we as staff closed one of our planning staff to get that project started. And with all federal processes, it took longer than we wanted to. So, what are we doing now? I think it was apparent with this most recent flooding, something needed to happen soon. And so we're evaluating a means of burying a trench through DOT right of way. That does have utility impacts to both MTA's facilities and the Matthew Grove water line. We've been coordinating with guys and attempt to come up with a relocation plan. And we're currently seeking funding to construct that. If we're able to go, our plan would be to construct that project this fall. And in the meantime, we're going to continue to monitor the site. If I have the ability to share my screen, is there a screen in the room?
I don't think that's going to work, unfortunately.
Okay, I do have some pictures on my computer. I can show, what we or what during that time. I'll attempt to describe them in the sense that this past event, a lot of the landowners in this area are more familiar so than I am, but we flew the drone following that event and found that in the proximity of the Talkeetna highway, we lost between 20 and 50 feet of bank. And the bank is just inside DOT's right of way currently. So we're going to continue to monitor that through Corel and our M&O staff. We'll continue to fly our drones to see any changes that would occur. We're currently watching weather events come through and making sure we're on top of any changes that Mother Nature may be bringing our way. And project, interim project ready for bid, as I mentioned, a little bit later this year for construction after water level is ideal construction time. But if we lose a large portion of the highway, we'll have to react. And the question was earlier, what would we do in instances where we've lost portions of our roadway embankment capacity?
Works down.
Hey, if you're on Zoom,
Sorry,
please mute.
Shows how much everyone's paying attention, including the state guy, and had to step away.
I think you can go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, we would certainly try to react and rebuild whatever embankment was maintained. We completely understand the critical nature of the transportation infrastructure as it provides access to the community and provides not just residential access, but emergency access as well. And that's our primary goal in this game is to keep that going. And we intend to do so through a series of projects at this point, both one in the near term and save things as much as possible. Still looking for funding sources there, and then one in the longer term using our federal pilot program. I'll also say that there's been discussion of long-term planning and collaboration between agencies, and I completely support that approach because we are, as we know, dealing with a long section of the bank here, a mile and a half. It's a very wide radius, and what one agency does then does affect other agencies. So more collaborative approach that we can have in the sense of how well DOT's project ties into local projects, how well the DOT ties into local projects, the more successful those likely individual projects will be. So,
Thanks, Orion, for that update. Are there questions in the room specific to
Where would the revetment start and end if they're talking about? Right.
Can you do that, Orion?
I could. Let me pull up the parcel to verify. But if you're familiar with the area, there's a culvert crossing that was recently relocated away from the river. And we would start just out of that area. Access to change that structure. We would bury the revetment and replace the driveway. We would extend it for the lot down south there, and then to the lot which I'm putting on the screen here, red roof. So frontage, 3 riverside lots. We have currently laid out. I spent this entire week coming up with concepts and trying to do what I can with the available information I have to get the best project under very, very limited funds that we would be dealing with. And that is the area I'm currently focused on. It's where the bank is closest to the roadway, and it's where your risks of advanced erosion impacting not just DOT infrastructure, but the utility infrastructure.
Brian?
You did speak to, right away, to this DOT right away in that section. And you stated that there was a hang up potentially because the borough as well is looking at potential for funding for out of the property. Is there any coincidence that could be leveraged?
I've certainly had this sort of conversation. I heard your questions. Tell me if I'm not quite answered. I had several conversations with the borough about these parallel tracks that we've been on regarding the borough's interest in using the NRCS grant for buyouts and DOT's interest in building a long-term erosion protection project. Those funding sources are completely separate. The NRCS funding does come with some stipulations, which I'm not knowledgeable enough to be able to speak to in this room, but I can speak to our DOT funding sources and what capabilities we have for parcel acquisition. And they are primarily tied to the purpose and need of the project. And so we have to first advance our project through the legal process. That evaluates, various alternatives and environmental impacts. And then from that point, preferred alternative is selected, and then that preferred alternative supports the department would then need to require right of way, or perhaps there's no overtime. It would be in this case, just for sake of conversation, perhaps there's available in some scenarios where we would not need to require right of way. That all gets determined through the preliminary design process and through establishing the purpose and need of that right of way acquisition. We're then authorized to make those acquisitions. When we pursue an acquisition, we appraise at the time the acquisition begins, and that becomes the basis of what offers are made. So I'm not a right-of-way expert. We have a whole group that does that. One-on-one version of the way right-of-way acquisitions work.
One thing, just to be clear, we're working very closely with DOT because different strategies or purposes of their use. And sometimes the NRCS in acquiring right of way for purposes under their program might conflict with how FHWA pursues their acquisition of rights of way. So we need to go buy property under an NRCS funding program that then prohibits or makes it very difficult for DOT to then take advantage of that acquisition for any kind of mitigation project they might come up with. So that's why we're working very closely, so we recognize the challenges there.
The utilities being in the way, and obviously to acquire the property, then you may not utilities to be located, and something could potentially be constructed quicker, which
And we're evaluating, obviously, the utilities are borough infrastructure. Evaluating that conversation today about this very topic. You know, it's the terminal end of our water line, you know, and the property served basically was impacted. So you're absolutely correct. You know, we're evaluating whether or not placement of that infrastructure is necessary, regardless if we have to put pipes back in the ground because no longer need for service. You know, we still have fire hydrants. We still have to terminate the line in an appropriate manner. So, you know, that those conversations are actively taking place.
What about electricity? Does power being on that side slow down the DOT's reduction projects?
I'm not as familiar with the power in that area, unfortunately. I don't know.
It's 90 below our house, and it goes right along our driveway, along the tracks, and crosses and goes by the depot. It doesn't go on that side of the road, but the water goes. It comes back over by Howard's, but it doesn't go right there. The water goes inside.
From the research that we performed, there is a service NEA that comes along the west side of the roadway, but it terminates north of where I was describing. We would start the northern end of this first betterment. So based on the research we've done so far, we don't anticipate conflict with the power under the assumption we stay to the south of that existing crossing.
Any more questions for DOT or Ryan? You got any more you want to add?
I just have a simple question again for DOT, going back to my question was, what happens tomorrow? If that roadway, if the DOT roadway starts to get eroded, if that section where we all know it is, what happens tomorrow when that happens? What does the DOT have in their back pocket to stop that?
Ryan, did you hear that question?
I did, not to put him on the spot, but maybe I could ask Burrell, being a maintenance manager, how they would approach that particular type of scenario.
Thanks, Orion. Am I being heard okay?
Yep.
All right, thank you. Yeah, my name is Burrell. I'm the Region Maintenance and Operations Manager. To speak right to the question, We are currently monitoring that site. We're tracking it daily. Staff are being informed as well as leadership and especially Orion on any kind of erosion. If we notice big differences, our intent is to potentially evaluate it for actions. An M&O response would likely be triage, initial triage. We would have to get permits. Potentially, we do have a declaration of disaster emergency from the government. And this potentially may help us with regards to permits, but we feel permitting would take maybe possibly a couple of days, but also sometimes emergency permits we can get after the fact, so we can start work immediately. M&O, as maybe some of you might know, is limited with regard to resources we have, the size of equipment, the amount of material. So likely we would respond with whatever we could. I would imagine it would be district-wide, and when I say district-wide, I would imagine to district to participate in any kind of resources, equipment, and materials. We'll try and get there as soon as possible. Folks in headquarters likely begin doing emergency contracting. The goal would be is to try and get larger resources, more resources on site. And of course, I don't want to leave the Matanuska out. I don't want to leave you out. We would constantly be needing information from that. So, yeah, I don't want to go on further, but I think that would be a high-level response to the question. Yeah, have to answer any more or answer more if that didn't get it.
You know, I want to add something to Burrell's comment there. I mean, manpower or materials. You know, typically what we see in response to this is riprap, the large big rock. And you know, with our project right now, that material is either viewed or it's over and shoot. Yeah. So you can imagine the time that it would take for travel time alone to get material here. And then, you know, this is the vendors that have that material. I mean, they've got a limited amount of volume readily available without doing an additional plan. So there is a little bit of a problem. Potentially would have to be a hurdle.
What about the railroad? There's not a Rockport and Curry and the railroad can get it there.
Actually, we have had conversations with the railroad and their ability to provide material from Curry. So you're absolutely correct. We haven't hauled yet, so I'll let you answer that question. I mean, that conversation was not.
Question for DOT. In 2012, we suggested that we get our vehicle packed up in case we have evacuated Talkeetna, because there's only one road in and one road out. At that point, it was thought to get a secondary road. 14 years ago now. Not roads for vehicle. You know, like a four-wheel drive.
I'm sorry. What's the question?
The question is, back in 2012, it was suggested that Talkeetna has one way in, and then there's one way out. Could there be a secondary road? Talkeetna, or third.
In an expedient manner? I mean,
No, not
no.
14.
And that takes planning, right? I mean, it takes planning, it takes design, it takes construction. Honestly, I think there's other, you know, those that are familiar know how to get there. Maybe
one trail.
Maybe,
It's you can't get a tour bus down it. You can't get a school bus down it.
and probably can't get 150 vehicles going all at once.
Yeah.
Right. I understand your frustration with a community that's has limited access.
Is there any discussion?
Certainly no.
Are you guys in discussion with the railroad where we use the depot at the tracks? Let's say that, you know, the permits took too long, you guys couldn't get the DOT, couldn't get the riprap, can you use the railroad's depot?
I'm going to answer this very bluntly. We invited the railroad to participate in this conversation tonight, and here I am. So I can't answer those questions necessarily about what the railroad will or won't do. No, I understand what I'm trying to say. I'm just trying to suggest that we are having as many conversations as we can because there are a lot of different players in this problem. And we can invite, we can't bring horse to water.
So you've had no negotiations with them or us? Yeah.
We have had preliminary conversations, yes.
I have a question for you. Given the nature of all the complexities and all the different players, would we benefit from having a dedicated project manager to oversee this and talk to all these entities, or is that you, Casey, or would that be beneficial? And if so, how do we make that happen?
Yeah, so because there's an active disaster, then that's the coordinator of. And so, but I rely on Tom and his group a lot to have those technical conversations about roads and bridges and rock and all that. But then we also have to deal with, the floodplain management, the permitting. That's fine. So I'm coordinator on that, at least at the high level. And then we, pull in manager as well if I need that help and assistance to make sure that Tom's doing his job, right? So that's how that works. But Tom is more than capable and his department to go out and make those contacts with those other entities without any direction or support we need to be able to do that.
So to your point, John, right now, there is discussions going on, multiple departments, like Brian and Burrell said. I mean, we're constantly facing with DOT. We engage with the railroad. We've got Chief here as a local resource, Amanda's here as a local resource. But, right now, there's really is no project that we are doing. DOT has their separate project. We're working through FEMA to get our grant, and that would provide us an opportunity to have a project. And part of that, establishing a stakeholder group, a working group, that will be many different departments and agencies involved. And then at that point, right over here in my camp, lead on that project.
Advisory board for the flood.
Oh, that's a great point. So there is an advisory board. Unfortunately, there's nobody on it. So there are 3 vacancies. If you have interest to be on the flood control advisory board, you're welcome to submit an application to the mayor and become part of our team.
To your point, like these ongoing questions about what are you doing about this week, like that would be a place for those conversations to occur, just like they do for TSW, just like they do for road service areas, just like they do for fire service.
Yeah, and that board has been vacant for years. Absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah, so, I guess question related directly to that flood control service area advisory board. I know when the sales tax came up and the votes around that, what are the requirements, since there has been a bit of a lack of clarity on who can be appointed to represent Talkeetna? What are the requirements to serve on that board? You have to be a resident, property owner.
Boy, I don't know exactly. I think you need to be a volunteer. Let's start with that. I mean, honestly, it's an unpaid position.
Just so
I believe, ideally you would be a community member that understands and recognizes the issue. But you got the answer.
I'll make sure John gets filled.
Yeah.
For a board that has lack of participation the way it has, I think we would be starved for somebody that would want to.
I just wanted to say that the Alaska Railroad has a bad habit of not working with communities. The Alaska Railroad is a corporation wholly owned by the state of Alaska. So it seems to me the governor has a representative here. We have state representatives, we have state senators, and I do believe it's time for the state of Alaska to tell the railroad they need to work with our
Todd's moving. Say me, come to the mic.
That's why we are representing that Valley. First, I wanted to thank DOT, the borough, everybody who's working on this. I know Manager Brown reached out to me with the preemptive disaster declaration. That was going to happen so that I can make the governor aware. I think everyone is doing the best that they can right now. I've heard the Alaska Railroad mentioned a lot of time, many times here. I will say that the best thing to do is to reach out to the Alaska Railroad, to reach out to Megan Clemens, who is the community, the community liaison. I don't know if external affairs as the governor was mentioned, I want to make sure people understand how it's a quasi-state agency. They own their own assets. The governor has attempted to make their budget part of the Executive Budget Act, but the legislature did not approve that legislation. But once a railroad board member is appointed, they serve their term and they cannot be removed just at will. Like I could be fired tomorrow by the governor, but they can't. And so it really is important to work directly with the railroad to communicate to the railroad. And you are right that the governor appoints board members, the legislature confirms them, but when they're in place, they have a lot of autonomy. So it's like many quasi-state agencies in our government. They have a board, they manage, they hire and fire their executive director, their CEO, whatever that title is. And so it really is best to reach out to them. I appreciate the borough's efforts in their attempt to work with the railroad as well. But I recommend that you reach out to the railroad directly.
I've got a couple notes, but I'll hit it because I share. Many of us are frustrated with the railroad because of this kind of semi-autonomous going on. I will personally reach out to Megan. I mean, I think Megan's very responsive in her defense and their defense, and ask them to participate, probably, John, in a future community council meeting. I know you did. But I'll reach out because I think part of the borough's role, even though we have absolutely no authority over the railroad, is to be an advocate for the community. So we'll reach out, share the frustrations that we've heard tonight, explain the questions that have been asked, and ask for some engagement directly with the community. So I'm not going to make any promises, but we will do that and see where that goes.
I had a question for the governor's office. What is the governor's office willing to do? What's the state willing to do to help us out and find resources? And what we done at that level, not with DOT necessarily, but with the governor's office and the state. It might take a borough bypass, you know.
So I recognize that I made a mistake by moving and then speaking. And you should stop me now. I realize this is a serious situation. I'm not trying to make light of it. Really good points. Like, you know, funding was brought up a number of times. Like, there's federal money. I know it's frustrating when there are all these rules about what money can be used for, what it can't be used for. The revetment and the Baker are a great example. Tom spoke to it, but I'll say it again, which is it's disaster money. You can't fill in a hole that didn't already exist. Like you have to only build on things that existed with disaster money. So that's one of those. It's just legally, you would be responsible if you misuse the money. Budgets. I mean, the legislature passes a budget every year. But the structural deficit that exists in the state of Alaska is $1.9 billion. We collect $1.9 billion less than our current state budget. So is it possible to have a line item in a supplemental budget which gets passed a little earlier next year? It could be. Speak to your legislature. This is the one time when I can say, don't talk to the governor about the budget because he's no longer the governor next year during session. So talk to your legislators. Maybe there is some money that you can get in the budget for land acquisition, for some of these projects, but money is very tight.
As opposed to expansion projects that haven't happened yet, how can we protect existing infrastructure before expansion? Like saying Talkeetna is going to wash away if we want to expand the road west. Is there any correlation that can happen in an emergency situation?
Well,
goals from expansion to preservation?
So once the legislature passes a budget, there is a purpose for that money, and
Emergencies don't change anything.
emergencies make emergency money available, but they don't allow money to be pulled from one specific line item for a project to another project. You can have the next legislature or during. I mean, yeah, one legislature can always change the budget, but it, is it for DOT?
You know, I'm not sure what, federal funding opportunity even have a mitigation assistance program. And going down to number 4, this speaks to Courtney's point. Use of state legislative grants sewer line repairs and system upgrades. That is a direct change in the intent of apparently a money that's out there to, that's right here.
No, absolutely. So like Mr. Brown said, we understand only for us, trying to figure out the pots of money that are eligible to be the local match, the federal or state funds. So we try to identify 5 different potentials. The one you just spoke to, Representative Kevin Cade gave us a state grant a couple years ago, actually, that was intended to help us improve our water infrastructure, including a new water storage. But we recently asked whether or not that grant could be used as a source match funds that we could leverage it against the $2 million that could be made available to us through the CDS grant. And in response to the state of that, yes. So if in the absence of any other match funds, we are able to go take $500,000, actually $666 out of that grant and use it as local match so that we can receive our $2 million federal.
What is that, what are you just asking? Is there money that can be taken from somewhere else? That's exactly what that is.
So I wanted to, so during a disaster, or in the disaster. So, I might have been talking about pre-disaster type of stuff where it's very hard to move to the other side. During a disaster at the borough level and at the state level, it opens up first to be able to go and do response type things. So it's a simple question that I think you asked, right? But it's not very convoluted answer as to how it happens and when it's allowable to happen. So Todd's right about not being able to get money programmatically at the state level before a disaster. After the disaster and during the disaster, that process is a disaster fund where they can move money to. So if a road needed to be built, hypothetically, or if a project needed to happen to protect an existing road, those funds we use initially to do that type of work. With the thought of if you spend $1 million doing something, then we're going to take it to FEMA and ask FEMA to declare a disaster, which then opens up federal money. So that's kind of some of that process, how that works. Just because the money is in the bank before a disaster doesn't mean you can use it for types of things. So.
Like, we have used any of that hundreds of thousands of dollars that just went in.
So let me speak to the flyer real quick. I want to hit on this funding real quick. So when we did the disaster declaration, the intent when we drafted that really was to see, can we get the state of Alaska to make money available for the non-federal match for NRCS or FEMA, the 2 opportunities we had before funding. The state said no. So number 2 is, hey, let's look at another option. So we're looking at the Denali Commission. We'll still pursue that. I don't know if that'll bear fruit or not, but we're going to try it. The reason we're doing it in this order is to try to keep money that's already in Talkeetna. We can use the legislative grant, which is item number 4, but it's going to take it away from the Talkeetna Sewer and Water Project, which might be okay. But the point is, we want to try to leverage these other opportunities, and if they're not available, we'll move to the next one. Really the takeaway is, it's pretty safe to say for the FEMA grant, we are going to find a match, and we're going to be able to leverage the FEMA. The whole thing with that disaster declaration, emergency declaration, was to really try to figure out how to get the non-federal match to develop a law. Then it rained sooner than it was supposed to. The good news is, and I give the credit to the Borough Assembly on this, the way that disaster declaration was set up is it buys us 6 months. When I have some authority to declare a local declaration in conjunction with the mayor for 7 days. The Borough Assembly gave us 6 months. So if we have more rains that come in later this month, I guess we're even into September, we are still going to be under that declaration. And we're still looking to the state of Alaska for disaster relief. Okay. But that's why we wanted to lay out some of these funding items for you. So you could see we're actively looking at different ways to bring money to the community to solve this problem, not just now, but into the future. And we're trying to leverage different opportunities to get there that don't involve taking money away from a project that's already in Talkeetna. That doesn't necessarily add, it just moves. And so that's why we wanted to lay some of this stuff out. The NRCS, depending on how things go, it's possible that CDBG money that's listed as item 3 may be able to get applied to the NRCS, and we're able to execute buyouts. So our priority right now is the FEMA mitigation, because that's what's going to allow us to move forward with a solution that's different than what we've been doing. And I just wanted to clarify on that. Go ahead.
Your voters in the borough have proven funds to fix our roads. Where's that money? We approved $400,000 for you 4 years ago.
Well, roads is a different character. We got the same thing. All right. Revenues that are guarded within the service area, and unless there's a voter approved ballot that allows us to spend area-wide funds. But I think what you're trying to talk about is a project that was approved by the Road Service Area Board of Supervisors, and there's work going on Yoder Road, on the bridge, on the revetment upstream of the bridge. So I'm not quite sure, but I'm familiar enough to tell you exactly which project you're referring to.
This is a problem area-wide. I know people all over the borough that approve streets to get repaired and they don't get repaired.
Well, maybe we can talk separately, because again, there are ways to hold projects area-wide, and that requires a ballot proposition. And we have several of those that they're typically larger projects that we're working on. I'm not familiar with Yoder Road being one of the past 3 ballot propositions.
Yes, let's keep it to flooding here in Talkeetna and housing here in Talkeetna.
History has a way of repeating itself. The blueprint for what's happening in Talkeetna is in the borough records. I was the borough assemblyman for this area for 11 years back in the 80s and 90s. The Matanuska River was doing exactly what this is doing now. Once we were after long-term plans, spending that kind of money, over $100 billion thrown in the river over there before Assembly made the decision to do something different. As part of that long-range plan was not to monkey with the river anymore. What to do if the river continues to erode in the area in the direction that it's going. Lost over, I think, 50 homes eventually that was lost. A lot of it was lost in the river, but it was determined by the Assembly as part of that long-term plan was the buyout program to get as many people and facilities and things away with the money that was available. So it was a voluntary program. I think it's still in the code now. Nobody likes to leave their home, but it was not mandatory. So that was one of the things. as part of your plan, we started working towards some of the things that were mentioned here tonight. What to do if the electrical network was washed out by the river. The Matanuska River Bridge going over to the Butte was one of the things. How to get around that, a different highway was mentioned. It was mentioned here tonight, was mentioned exactly the same way then. So in those plans, rather than spending all your money and time on the river itself, don't want to give up, but start working towards what has to be done to protect the people that will be affected by this flooding situation in Talkeetna in the future. I will guarantee you there are emergency funds that can be spent to affect public utilities. If that highway is washed out, they will get back somewhere else. If the railroad gets washed out, they will. If any power lines goes down, they will put it back. 6 flood. The Parks Highway was washed out at Montana Creek. Took about a week, 10 days to put that back. The only way to get Fairbanks to go around the highway. The railroad bridge was washed out. The railroad replaced that, moved to a different location within 10 years. So that's where I would ask you to add into your plan, your long-range, what to do with all of these support things that will need to be replaced. And we actually moved money, a lot of this planning money that's going to go into having more paper. We put that money into that buyout program, and many people away from the river as we could. So if you go back and resurrect all that paper, at least you get started on something like this.
If you ignore the river, the town is in the buyouts. You're not gonna buy out Mountain High, like ignoring the river, focusing on buyouts, the wrong direction to go. There's all of us. I mean, maybe live up the hill, but anything that's down from that, we're there. We're right on top of it. The whole town's right on top of it.
Right.
Yeah.
I like God. It's always dangerous in your mouth and.
No, I know, I'm not attacking you, I'm just saying.
So,
I'm just curious how it would work to ignore the river at this point and stay.
You got a great point, because I thought the same thing. I mean, there's a balance between what you're saying.
It's going to be too late.
Oh, yeah, it's too late already.
There's a difference between what we can do on an emergency basis. And, that's exactly it. So, I mean, we could sit here and answer some more questions, but I think it's kind of dying down a little bit. I think you guys get the sense of the magnitude of the problem, how we're trying to attack it, what our hurdles are.
How can we help?
Well, and that's what I was going to end my point here. Yeah, and I'll get back to that in just a second. But what you want to hear is, what are we going to do right now? I think you heard what DOT is doing. What is the borough going to do? So we have the dike revetment, and we do have some damages on the revetment from the one that we just repaired this summer, or not more than a few weeks ago, honestly. So we intend to do some more work on it. And again, limited to repairing what's already there, we're not being able to expand. We'd love to be able to tie the dike and revetment together and try to fill in this big hole. It didn't come out right. My apologies. Excuse me.
I guess
Lost the thought.
what can we do? I'm not like.
No, absolutely. So, I mean, I want to say two things. So we're monitoring the water line that's active right now, but we don't want it to rupture when it's not being monitored because of the rapid loss of landfill around the pipe, and we're within 15 feet of our main line right now. So we got eyes on the riverbank. Fortunately, right now we got a spell of dry weather. That's going to change. I mean, July was kind of an oddball. It's kind of out of phase rain period, right? Past few years, it's August, September, early October. So it came out of a weird time. We know August later this month, we're going to see problems, and that's when the river rises back up and we monitor the river forecast, we start clenching our teeth a little bit about what kind of loss we're going to get. So from the borough's perspective, the dike revetment and the water line. And then what can you do? I think you've heard a little bit. Obviously, reaching out to your local borough, state representatives, maybe even your codels, and showing that this is an issue of community concern that's going to require a little bit more attention and at least know we get to you. I mean, every day we're trying to do something to figure out how. The fact that we have some sunny weather is giving us a little bit. That's only going to last for weeks. I don't want you guys leaving here tonight thinking that we've got a solution that solve this problem this year. Next year. This is a problem that's going to be persistent for the next several years until we can put together a plan and then figure out what money to put that plan. Go ahead.
Yeah, I want to add something real quick.
Sorry.
But
Say it, like everybody said, it takes water to move water for the land. If we move the water, that's gonna be our best. And at this point, we don't and see us in place. If it's lit up, we gotta move on the backside. It's gonna happen, otherwise we turn, it's gonna hurt us on the road, so last, because they're stuck on a pole for 6 hours. And you put in the other 6 hours, and the other 6 hours. This is a midway point. We're gonna lose it all. And then it's gonna trickle down. We need a D9 Trapper Creek excavators, mine it, move it. There's no sand in the tree anymore, who cares? We're talking around. It's all paperwork, it's all red tape, that's all I've heard. We're men and women, we're human beings. We need to survive. Gotta get our heads out of whose office is doing what and just move the river to help them out. It's not gonna hurt you. Just do it. That's what everybody here is saying. Now is the time. The river's gonna take the road out. The next rainfall, you guys know it. You guys know it.
There's a 25.
We can see it on your faces. Your hands are tired. It's not your fault. It's just the red tape BS we hear every day on the news through the rest of the nation. Throughout the world and all the other BS, tired of it. We're Alaskans, we want action. We wait to go to your best. I know about you. This is just me being passionate, but we need to make something happen. We need powers to be with the equipment, the 302, whoever we got to get involved with that. Plead with them to help us out. Move the Talkeetna. It's going to change it all. And it's going to be a fraction of the cost and advice you guys coming not stress out. And try to just throw money in the river and have nothing. Well, what do we do now? And this should have happened 10, 15 years ago. And you know it. Sorry. Wait for an But that's what.
Statement noted. So I want to talk real quickly and say the other things we'll walk away from. I am interested in, we'll talk a little bit about the alternate access, and I don't know that the lady asked this, but there is currently nothing in the works necessarily for that, but we'll take a look, and then just the emergency response plan if there was limited access, let's call it. So we'll take a look at that. I will get with the railroad. I mentioned that earlier. I am interested in the idea of the economic analysis. I don't know that we're going to go spend $100,000 to do that, but I think having a way to talk about the value different than just our assessed value is helpful, right? Like the economic engineer. So I got that. We'll look at that. And then the other thing you could do that would be helpful, Tom already kind of hit on what we talked about, state officials and our federal officials, but also at the local level, like, because I think John kind of alluded to it and we talked about it, is how do we continue the community conversation about where we're going, what we're doing as things change and evolve? I think that flood control service area, it'd be a good place if we get some solid members on there, because that's going to help engage with us and like carry the conversation, because I necessarily something for the community council to do, but that might be a vehicle where it's a little bit more focused that keeps a better level of engagement than what we've had, because this is going to continue for some time in the future. And I hear you, I got it. I'll talk to you afterwards. I'm not going to get into a debate with you about when we're going to go get an excavator or do something about it.
That's what the Pearl has. I got skid steer.
But I think we're winding down. I've seen a lot of people leave already. I do appreciate you guys coming out. I know we all, actually a lot of folks in here tonight. And we're here. Yeah, we're here. Like, I know we're not here, but we're in the valley. Like, and if there's, if there's other stuff you want to talk about or you want to, like, we're here. Like, we'll show up. I know sometimes we take passionate discussions and stuff. We work for you. We're not confused by that.
Thank you for actually being here.
Yeah, and that's, so we'll work through it. I know it's a tough situation. I can tell that from you. I know I was here. I think she may have left. Like, we understand that this. Oh, there you are. You moved. Good. I was looking to talk to you afterwards. But I appreciate the time. And Eric, I want to give you props too. Like, great job up here. I think just him being local and available. I mean, I was on the phone with him Friday night. I think he was probably on Becky's deck at that time. Like, you have local resources that can reach out to us and talk to Casey, to talk to Ken and others. If we're not like right there in that moment, and you're like, I want to talk to somebody about it. So I think we've probably concluded for tonight.
Michael,
We're going to stick around.
I want to bring up Chief Chapel real quick.
Yeah.
Real quick, I want to thank Burrell and Orion for
Hey, everybody. So I'm a measure all of everything we do in seconds and minutes. So I see your guys' frustration. I've been here trying to do some stuff, some of the things that happened in the last couple weeks. We have been flying a drone, getting footage to the borough. What's happening. We also met with the National Weather Service. They came up, they sent a couple people up here and looked at this last high water event because they're trying to refine their model so that when X amount of rain happens up in the hills, they have the right river level. So these are things that'll help us in the future. I will be the person probably that if it does reach the road that, we'll be out there blocking it for a couple hours or running traffic for a couple hours until DOT gets there. I've also worked with the property owners to do things like get fuel barrels moved and propane tanks moved so that when homes do go into the river, if they do, that we're not contaminating the river. So there's things that we're doing, not necessarily big, huge things, but we're trying to do things. One thing I would like everybody to do is if, I'm emergency response, so that's like life safety type stuff, but I am the eyes and ears for some of these people. Also, if you see something like a building go into the river, let me know. Give me a call. A lot of you know my number. If not, 795-2389. I'll give you a card afterwards. Call me. Let me know that the building went in, and if you confirm that nobody was in that building, that is huge on the emergency response side of things. We had to send boats last year, right, Becky? Was that last year that the van went in? 2 years ago? To go down and look at a river or a van that went into the river to be sure it wasn't occupied. So knowing that building goes in and it's not occupied is huge on our side to be able to say, hey, there's no life threat. That's the one thing I ask. And if you guys see something that's not an emergency, but let me or the borough be aware of it, give me a call. I'll answer 24 hours a day. Let me know, and then I'll get messages to Casey or Ken or whoever needs them and to be able to get people up here and get stuff done.
What's your number again?
907-795-23. If you call the fire station, it forwards to my cell phone too. But you can call or text that number. It's myself. So thank you, John, for putting this all together.
Thank you.
I think we're going to wrap up. It's been a long night. Really heartened by the turnout tonight. A lot of passion, a lot of emotion. It shows how much people care about this community. That's awesome, and we're going to keep fighting this. And I really want to sincerely thank the borough staff, Mike, Tom, Casey, Mike, all you guys coming up here, being in person, that means a lot to us here in this room. We know you the best you can fighting it. So thank you, everybody. If you still have questions that didn't get answered, you know the people here in the room, if you can funnel them through the community council, we can forward them out the best we can as well. But I think we're going to call it a wrap. Thank you very much.
Thank you for doing the tech side and.
Yeah, I wish we would have.